Hi, everybody. It is June 8th, 2026, and we're going to be talking about a lot. We're going to be talking about the Iran and Israel strikes that took place over the weekend, back and forth strikes, and essentially this led to a ceasefire. We've been hearing about a ceasefire for the past how many months now? How many weeks now on end? A lot. And again, at the same time, Trump is trying to maintain this entire peace deal, and so that's what we're being told. And at the same time, we have Netanyahu appearing to be unfazed and basically saying no to the U.S. president. And at the same time, we have H.R. 8800 that's being pushed through in Congress. And what does that do? That's the National Defense Authorization Act, which allows Israel's fusion into the United States military and all of that intelligence, that technology, all of the classified documents that we have, Israel would have access to that. And so we're not supposed to really be combating that. We have AI data centers in Saline, Michigan that are being put up, and Gretchen Whitmer loves the idea of it. And at the end of the day, you have no choice but to submit to it. And then on top of that, it is, again, also the anniversary of the USS Liberty, where we had, again, on June 8th, 1967, during the Six-Day War, we had 294 U.S. personnel on board, where 34 were killed, 31 were sailors, and 2 were Marines, with 171 wounded, and there was 800-plus holes in the vessel from gunfire. On top of that, there are still claims that it was an accident, and it was all because of the fog of war. But here, it was Israel, our greatest ally, who did it to us. So we're going to be covering all of this information, all of the different wars on top of the Russia-Ukraine war, what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to be studying some maritime traffic, some flight activity, and the markets as well. So be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. And if you want to get a good insight into what's going on this show and really what's happening in the news when I'm not on stream, when I'm not live streaming, go to our YouTube shorts on Geopolitics. Be sure to subscribe to that channel. And at the end of the day, I have nothing else. Let's jump right into the news. So, again, Israel, Iran returned to ceasefire agreement after Trump demands an end to the shooting. Very big news at the end of the day, because this is going on back and forth. Ceasefire, then it's not a ceasefire. Ceasefire, then it's not a ceasefire. What is really happening? Well, this war is probably likely going to continue on, and the reason being is because where we're at right now in this entire war, it's not looking like the United States president has any authority over Israel, and he's not able to restrain Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. Iran and Israel exchanged missile fire late Sunday night, shattering President Donald Trump's ceasefire and putting peace talks in doubt. Iran launched missiles into Israel after the IDF carried out strikes against Hezbollah in Lebanon this weekend. Israel retaliated with its own strikes on Tehran, targeting military infrastructure and missile production facilities. Trump has demanded that all sides stop shooting. President Donald Trump warned Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that escalating military action could leave Israel isolated in a conflict with Iran. And at the end of the day, we also have the leaks that have been coming from Axios, where Trump says, you're effing crazy, Prime Minister Netanyahu. If you're going to continue these wars, you're going to put everybody against Israel, and everybody's going to hate Israel. And really what that message is to say is that all you have is the United States. And if you lose us, then you've lost everything. So we'll see what happens with that. But it doesn't appear that anybody is able to stop Israel on the other side of this. And nobody's willing to really say anything or do anything about it. And all we can really do is complain. But it's interesting to see at the latest, Congress, again, selling us out. Again, through H.R. 8800, which is the National Defense Authorization Act, all of these things give the Israeli military all this access to the U.S. military, our technology, our intelligence, our infrastructure, pretty much everything you can think of. President Donald Trump said he scaled back the scopes of an Israeli attack on Iran after the Middle East countries urged him to push Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu toward diplomacy. Iran announced plans for a new resistance security corridor stretching from the Strait of Hormuz to the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So this is all extremely important news. President Donald Trump warned Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday that escalating military action could leave Israel isolated in a conflict with Iran, according to reports. The warning came after a fragile moment following missile exchanges between Israel and Iran and amid efforts to preserve the ceasefire. I told Bibi, you better be careful what you do because you might be soon left alone against Iran, Trump quoted as saying, according to Israel's Channel 12 News. The remarks came after Iran and Israel said they had stopped military attacks. Iran International also reported that Israel had approved the dramatic attack against Iran before Trump called it off, also citing a report from Channel 12. So that's an article, and at the end of the day, this is more of a summary. Again, this is on my YouTube shorts, and we're going to go through some of these just to kind of get an encapsulation of what happened over the weekend. And it was a lot over the weekend. Take a listen to this.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has long portrayed himself as being adept in dealing with Donald Trump. But an acrimonious phone call this week with the US president, in which Trump is said to have called Netanyahu effing crazy, has laid bare tensions between the two leaders.
At some point I said, Bibi, we got to stop this.
Israeli officials have acknowledged that it was the most heated phone call yet. While one official dismissed any suggestion of a material change in the pair's relationship, another said it had politically damaged Netanyahu ahead of elections later this year. Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving prime minister, has repeatedly clashed with Republican and Democratic administrations. Yet Israel has remained Washington's closest Middle East ally. But Nimrod Gorin, the president of Mitvim, an Israeli think tank, says the differences are now very public, unlike in the past when they were usually quietly managed behind closed doors. Following their call, Trump said Israel and Hezbollah had agreed to stop shooting each other, but it prompted accusations by Netanyahu's political opponents and some within his own government that he had ceded Israel's sovereignty to the US. The wars with Iran and Hezbollah have been widely popular in Israel, including among supporters of Netanyahu's political rivals. Much of the public wants the fighting to continue. That stands in contrast to the US, where many voters, including members of Trump's conservative base, oppose the war. Recent polls show that Netanyahu's coalition government, the most right-wing in the country's history, could fail to win a majority at the next election. According to think tank Gorin, Netanyahu is working to accommodate Trump's demands, as he hopes the president's support will work in his electoral favour. But he adds that some Israelis are not comfortable with the extent Trump appears to be able to influence Israeli military decisions. In contrast, in the US, some Trump critics say that Netanyahu holds outsized influence over US foreign policy. Since the US and Israel opened the war with Iran, Netanyahu has at times said he speaks with Trump almost daily, often characterizing their relationship to the Israeli public as one between peers who make decisions together.
So at the end of the day, you have to remember that through this entire war, why is Trump not pushing back against Israel a little bit harder? Why are you seeing a lot of these developments continuing to go on with Israel? Why does Prime Minister Netanyahu and then Trump, they seem to be going back and forth, back and forth. It's like they're playing a game of chess with one another. And why is that? Well, a lot of people aren't remembering that the Trump family, 80% of the Trump family is Jewish, okay? And at the end of the day, that is from the words of Eric Trump himself. And you also have to remember the most important part of this entire puzzle and equation. You have to remember that the Abraham Accords are also in existence right now. What are the Abraham Accords? Well, this is a real estate deal that is going to essentially allow new construction to be built in Gaza, where you're seeing a lot of the incidents happen with the Israelis. Again, a new strike just happened today. And as a matter of fact, speaking of Gaza, today, Israel literally blocked any and all aid to Gaza from this point on. We heard about the Florida activists who were arrested and detained by Israeli IDF. And at the end of the day, they were let go, but some of them were placed in prison for a short time. So what do you see happening? Well, you have to think about the Abraham Accords and this entire real estate transaction that's taking place. You have Jared Kushner, who's taking the Albanian island right now with Ivanka Trump. And again, they changed the law in Albania specifically so that this island could be acquired. So you have all of these things happening with the Kushner movement. They call him the new Epstein, maybe not. But we also have the Abraham Accords that we have to think about. And this is all a real estate deal at the end of the day. So Trump wants this war to continue just as much as Netanyahu. And it benefits the Trump administration, or not really the Trump administration, but it benefits the Trump family for this war to keep going against Iran. Because again, also, if Iran is defeated, then the United States and Israel, well, really Israel mostly, would control the entire trade routes in the Middle East. They'd be a superpower and just about as powerful, if not more powerful, than the United States. The problem with this, the United States has never been loyal to America, and they've never been loyal to our own cause. And again, the reason this is an issue is you think about things like the USS Liberty, again, took place in 1967, and not so long ago. Again, 34 were killed that day, 171 were wounded. And ultimately, this was because of our greatest allies who like to still say that it was an accident. It was a military accident. It was due to the fog of war. But ultimately, this was our greatest allies who, in my opinion, and according to Thomas Massie's opinion, this was all intentional. Okay, so we have a lot more news that we're going to be covering here today. So we have Iran and Israel saying that they will pause strikes but warn of retaliation if ceasefire breached again. What do you think is going to happen? We've only been hearing about this entire ceasefire being broken probably 12, 15 times now. Like, it's crazy. So we're going to see this war likely continue. The oil prices are likely going to spike at least up to $180 a barrel, at least in the markets. And then in the gas pumps, we're already seeing $5 gas prices in the state of Michigan. So with all of this increase in gas, you might even just see up to like $8 to $15 gas prices across the country. Okay? And don't forget that you also still have elections that really need to be secured in that entire process. You have the state of California, where Karen Bass is projected to beat Spencer Pratt, who Spencer Pratt has had a pretty large and positive following from the entire American public. But despite that, all these mail-in ballots come in overnight, and suddenly Karen Bass is winning. What do you think that is? Well, don't forget about Dominion voting systems and the reason Trump lost the first time. And so again, Israel blocks all aid into Gaza as collective punishment for Iran strikes. So we talked about this a little bit. Iran shot missiles at Israel after it violated a so-called ceasefire in Lebanon. I like how the media calls it a so-called ceasefire. It was agreed upon, and again, there were strikes that Israel took against Lebanon where they killed a lieutenant general of the Lebanese army, and ultimately this completely directly violated Iran's requests and their entire list of demands. And really, they do control the narrative right now. They control the Strait of Hormuz. And remember, before this whole war started, the United States was already controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Who do you think is going to control that Strait of Hormuz when this entire war wraps up and concludes? It's going to be Israel. It's not going to be America. And this is the issue with all of this. We're losing all of the allies that we once had. And not only that, now we're losing all of the oil and the power we had over that regional area. Israel has once again cut off all aid to Gaza and closed all crossings to the Strip, intensifying its genocidal blockade as the population faces widespread disease and malnutrition. The move, announced by Israel's military coordinator of government activities in the territories, Kogat, comes after Iran launched missiles at Israel on Sunday in retaliation for its strikes against Lebanon. Israel has repeatedly violated its ceasefire agreement with Hamas and Hezbollah, killing hundreds in both Gaza and Lebanon in recent months as it seizes control of more land. The apartheid state last cut off all entry into Gaza in late February following the outbreak of the U.S. and Israel's illegal war on Iran. Hamas and Hezbollah form part of the Axis of Resistance, an informal Iran-backed coalition of groups fighting Israel. Israel frequently targets the civilian populations in areas where Axis members operate. Kogat said in a post on X that on Monday that crossings into Gaza would be closed until further notice. It falsely claimed that the move will not affect the humanitarian situation in Gaza, which, again, is false. It added the substantial qualities of food or quantities of food that have entered the Strip since the beginning of the ceasefire significantly exceed the nutritional needs of the population. That's from Joshua Carroll, who is a writer and a journalist for this outlet. So again, Al Jazeera, we also have to cover a little bit of the Russia-Ukraine war. Again, we said we'd be covering that. CCTV captures moment of deadly strike on Zaporizhzhia, Ukraine. CCTV footage captured the moment a missile struck Zaporizhzhia, Ukraine, killing 2 people and injuring 23, according to regional authorities. Kiev and Moscow have exchanged accusations of striking the region home to Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. So again, that's what this entire war is. Over the weekend, we saw strikes from the Ukrainians on St. Petersburg, which is a naval port, somewhere near a naval port in Russia, a big economic power front in Russia. Again, we also saw an oil refinery that was struck by the Ukrainians in Russia. Meanwhile, Russians also struck Kiev, and again, this is going back and forth. But why? Because this entire Ukraine war and Russia war, you have to remember, Ukraine is a proxy of the United States military, okay? Ukraine is being used as a proxy to fight the Russians. We want control over the rare earth elements in Ukraine, and we want that territory, and also we want to be able to essentially put the Nord Stream pipeline 2 in there. We want control over that, while the Russians also essentially right now have control over that Nord Stream pipeline 2. And Putin just made a statement over that over the weekend. So again, when we look at some of these other stories, the Ukraine war latest, Kiev recaptures area twice the size of Birmingham. Ukraine's army chief says Kiev's troops are holding their defense despite constant pressure from the Russian side after Vladimir Zelensky told Sky News Ukraine will not silently die against Russia. Watch the exclusive interview with Yada Hakim and catch up on the developments below. So again, latest developments, drone shot down in Latvian airspace after the air threat alert. Second alert issued after drone incursion. Ukraine recaptured 600 square miles of land since the start of the war in 2026, or since the restart of the war, you could say, in 2026. Lavrov pours doubt on peace talks with Europe, and Zelensky meets with the king. Zelensky's interview summarized that Putin has to answer his open letter, and then that Roman Abramovich is Russian-Ukraine's go-between, and that they will not silently die, as we discussed before. So that's all of the news on Russia and the Ukraine war. that's continuing on. Who do you think is going to win that war? Ultimately, we also had this news. This comes from Mario Nawfal on X. Iran launched a major drone attack targeting U.S. bases in Iraq's Kurdistan region. Again, all big news, okay? Very important to note that this is all happening today. Multiple drones aimed at areas around Saran and Khalifan, east of Erbil. U.S. air defense intercepted most of them. U.S. troops in the region are once again caught in the crossfire of someone else's war, with Iraqi sovereignty getting trampled in the process. So this source comes from Warfront Witness, Geopolitics Watch on Telegram, and the writer Oliver specifically. So here's some footage of that. World War III has been wonderful, hasn't it? This is 2026 that you're living in, ladies and gentlemen, and this war is only going to continue. The question is, are you ready? And why hasn't it come to America yet? Well, honestly, I think the Israelis will be doing everything that they've been doing to Palestine and Gaza right here in America, and I think that's coming very soon. It's just not our turn yet. And ultimately, that's one of the more scary things. And especially with Congress selling out your country and all of your politicians selling out your country, it's not really a great thing that we're looking into the future right now. Okay? It's not looking good for the United States. We are losing our control over Israel, and what has really caused this entire cascade of major events and developments in the past couple years now. And again, the quickening is happening. So when you see this entire missile strike going on, you have to think twice about where things are going. What's really in store for the future? So again, let's cover what happened this weekend. When it came to the wars in Iran, everybody's watching the war with Iran and Israel. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen. Is Israel going to be able to achieve their objective of the Greater Israel Project? Are they going to be able to achieve their objective of taking 7 countries within 5 years? Well, it's already happened almost, and Iran is really the last in the way. And that's why we are at war with Iran right now. For 20 years, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been trying to get the United States into this war with Iran. Why? Because, well, Iran has a nuclear weapon. Iran has a nuclear weapon and we must fight back. Well, that's not true. And at the end of the day, Iran has always had a nuclear enrichment program because it is a deterrence against Israel, who has constantly been bombing Iran. And we also have to understand, how come we don't know more about the Israelis' nuclear program? All we know is that the Israelis allegedly have somewhere between 90 and 200 nuclear warheads. Well, Iran has none of those. They have an enrichment program, and they have 90 million people who are sovereign, and they are split up into different armies across the entire country with different leaders and different sects, all of these different things. And so the Iranians are fighting back for their sovereignty, which is interesting because a lot of Iran's population is actually Christian, and Israel's, again, is Jewish, as we know, but they also worship Baal when you look at the end of the day. So here's a couple of the developments that happened. So this is the most recent strike. Israel retaliates against Iran hours following Iranian strikes. So again, pretty crazy when you look at it. Israel launched airstrikes on military targets in western and central Iran, hitting areas including Tehran, Tabriz, and Isfahan, just hours after Iran fired a ballistic missile towards northern Israel on June 7, 2026. Most Iranian missiles were intercepted with no major damage reported in Israel. The rapid escalation follows Israel's earlier strikes on Hezbollah targets in Beirut and comes amid the fragile April 2026 ceasefire in the ongoing Israel-Iran conflict. So again, when you look at this, you also have to understand that the Israelis broke the ceasefire first here. They ended up striking Lebanon, and they took out a lieutenant general of the Lebanese army against completely the ceasefire orders and all of the demands of Iran. They're not going to end this war anytime soon. The Iranians, or the Israelis, want this war to continue because it is in their better interest. It is the interest of the Greater Israel Project. And until people talk about that, you'll never understand why this is happening. Why is Israel taking the northern front of Lebanon, or the southern front of Lebanon, with Tyre being one of the oldest ancient civilizations on Earth, in the world? Well, they're taking it because, again, they want that southern front, not just for the Golan Heights, they want the entire country. Okay, and ultimately, they already have Beirut. The Israelis have already owned Beirut for a long time, for many decades now. There's been wars being fought there. We've had U.S. special operations going on there for a long time, trying to secure the area. This has been a regime change operation for at least the past 2 decades. Everybody else has just been asleep, and they didn't want you knowing about it. So again, what else happened over this weekend? Well, again, what led to that last strike? It was this. Ultimately, it was this entire strike that Iran ended up taking in retaliation against the Israelis for breaking the ceasefire.
Ballistic missile strikes being carried out across Israel. And this again underscores just how delicate these potential talks are. And even though we heard the president tell Fox that we were potentially just days away from securing a deal, that now all of that might be in jeopardy. We've heard the president say that negotiators are getting closer, and he's underscored some of his hard lines that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and that Iran cannot be able to have language in that deal that would allow them to, in the future, potentially buy a weapon. We've also heard the president push back, saying this is not an endless war. It comes as the war has now stretched into the 100-day mark. So there is a lot of pressure from Democrats saying this needs to come to an end. There's simply too much strain on the American public when it comes to gas prices and the overall impact on the economy. At the same time, of course, we did see that new uptick in the jobs numbers report, so that was a positive there. So we have heard some pushback in terms of what the administration says it's seeing this. But at the end of the day, the president has reiterated that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon and that these kinds of attacks cannot continue to be carried out across the Middle East. And this isn't the latest attack that we've seen. It was just in the last 2 days. The U.S. Central Command says that it had to intercept incoming Iranian drones, so aerial assaults. There are 2 taking place over the Strait of Hormuz, according to U.S. Central Command, and other drones that were carried out, drone attacks carried out just the day prior. So we've been seeing this escalation. Obviously, right now in the last hour, this is taking a dramatic turn with the president
Again, this was just
saying,
yesterday.
Iran, you have fired your missiles, come back to the negotiation table. So we'll have to see if that actually does turn into anything. This obviously is a very, very scary situation, to say the least, for the people in Israel who have been needing to hunker down in bomb shelters.
Yeah, the poor people in Israel. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this entire war is happening because President Trump has not been pushing hard enough against Prime Minister Netanyahu. He's making it seem like he is, but at the end of the day, I don't really believe any of the Axios leaks or the phone calls saying that he called Prime Minister Netanyahu effing crazy and that he's going against Netanyahu. I don't believe any of it. Because, again, I'm remembering the real estate transactions that are taking place. I'm remembering the Abraham Accords. I'm thinking about the actual incentives for the United States to be and control the entire state of Israel. If we control the state of Israel, which is rather important, actually, because if we don't control it, then Israel controls it, which means they control the entire Middle East and all of the trade. And I believe on some levels, the United States does have to control and maintain leverage over the state of Israel, or we are going to end up in these endless wars like we are right now. And again, we have the Abraham Accords also, which are going to be building a lot of basically a Trump Tower in Gaza City and all of these things. So again, all of this will happen over the next couple years. So again, this is also an event that happened in Israel. 6 Israelis were wounded in a multi-site shooting. This was just yesterday in Coach Javier, Israel.
هذه الصور صور مباشرة من موقع حادثة إطلاق النار في محطة وقود بمستوطنة كوخاف يائير.
So again, they're speaking in Hebrew, but I translated it into English.
الإسرائيلية هذه نقطة أو منطقة خط تماس ونتنياهو يجري مشاورات أمنية في أعقاب العملية.
Just after this, so that's kind of interesting. So after this event, Netanyahu was already holding these incidents, or already holding meetings. 1 was dead and 5 were wounded in the shooting incident. And green line, these pictures are from the site of the operation. Israeli sources, one of the perpetrators of the operation was arrested while he was wounded. He is being investigated on the ground. While Israeli helicopters, police are doing extensive searches to search for the other points. So again, when you see all of this happening, it's pretty wild. There's no way we're getting out of this war. And again, this is the original strike that broke the ceasefire. This was on June 6, 2026. This is in Kfar Tabanet and Cardedale. And this was near Mayor Yahan and Nabatea in southern Lebanon. So again, this is the strike that killed a lieutenant general of the Lebanese army by the Israelis. Inflicted by the Israelis, this killed a lieutenant general of the Lebanese army. And I think this is really what broke the ceasefire originally, actually, when you look at it. And then this is when Iran actually ended up striking. So, and then after Iran strike, the Israelis struck back, and then we've been seeing back and forth strikes unpredictably every single weekend, really every single day, it seems. And then there's usually maybe a ceasefire for 3 to 4 days if we're lucky. We'll see how the markets react. But again, we're just looking at some of the footage that happened over the weekend here. So again, this is the damage that the Israelis had done in Lebanon. Just in southern Lebanon, near Marjayon and Nabatea. Pretty wild. So again, U.S. downs. This also happened. U.S. military shot down 4 Iranian attack drones near the Strait of Hormuz. So again, this is confirmed by Central Command, CENTCOM, and they confirmed American forces shot down 4 Iranian one-way attack drones heading straight for the Strait of Hormuz, the critical choke point carrying 20% of the world's oil. The drones posed as an immediate threat to maritime traffic. In self-defense, U.S. strikes then took out Iranian coastal radar and drone command sites on Qashem Island in Garuk, Iran, near the Strait of Hormuz. Iran hit back hard, launching 7 ballistic missiles targeting U.S. facilities in Kuwait and Bahrain. U.S. and allied defenses intercepted 6, the 7th missing its target. No U.S. casualties reported. This rapid-fire exchange, drones, U.S. radar strikes, Iranian missile barrage, marks a dangerous new chapter in the U.S.-Iran tensions. Why now? Well, it's because the United States is not following the peace agreement and the terms of that, which, again, what have the Iranians really demanded? The Iranians have demanded that we stop all strikes on Hezbollah, and we basically restrain Israel, which we have not been able to do. The Iranians have also demanded that we release all sanctions and that we give them their money, basically allow them to make money and earn some kind of yield from the Strait of Hormuz, of which they now control. And they do control the Strait of Hormuz now. As we look at maritime traffic, we'll see more of that very clearly. So that's kind of what's happening there. And again, that story, that's just not really loading. So again, this was also big. Trump walked out of an interview yesterday, and I thought this was interesting. This was a Kristen Welker interview, and he basically called all of the media corrupt, stuck to the script as he always does, but classic Trump.
I think it's appropriate that they have an election, and 5 days later, they're nowhere close to picking a winner.
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote in California.
They're crooked, just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
really.
Let's
well,
continue.
You play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play
continue.
right into their hands with this rap. You know that these elections are rigged.
Now that's true, though. Even though, we have a lot against Trump for what he's been doing and being very anti-America first recently, and he's been really taking the side of the Israelis, it seems. He's been very Israel first. At the same time, he's not wrong that the U.S. election process is completely rigged. And you see that. You look at the state of California and the Los Angeles mayor race between Karen Bass and Spencer Pratt. How is Spencer Pratt not winning, obviously? He has all the support of the public. You can see it. Any social media app, you look at the comment section, everybody's pro Spencer Pratt, except, again, according to the mail-in ballots, that's not the case. And these mail-in ballots are creating this illusion that Karen Bass and these Democrats continue to be winning. So our election process is completely thwarted from honest and integral
Your
elections.
network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But, Mr. President,
you know why I got that?
Presented
because you have no
evidence.
Credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about. I want to talk about Todd.
You
Blanche.
have more evidence. There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk
Your
about
elections in this country were like a third world.
There's thousands of videos, though, on the internet showing people like literally double voting in ballots. You have all the ballot counters literally pulling in all these buckets and bins of votes that are completely in the middle of the night, and they're the ones like doing this, and they're voting for people twice. There's videos all over the place. You got people who are collecting ballots and they're ripping up Trump ballots. I mean, we saw all of those videos in 2020 and in 2024. So we can't deny that these elections are 100% rigged.
Country. Your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked, and so is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But Mr. President,
you're one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat in the rain with you.
I know.
I've sat in the rain with you for an hour, on and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press because you know what? A country can never be great with a dishonest
press. Listen, we traveled all the way to Wisconsin for this interview.
That's funny. So that's classic Trump for you. So at the end of the day, again, this is what a lot of people were saying, though. And this is the part that makes Trump look bad in this interview. It's when he said, I didn't guarantee no war.
You insisted no
but he did.
wars.
First of all, I didn't guarantee no war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars.
I feel like he didn't mean to say that.
No more wars, no more disruptions. We will have prosperity and we will have peace. Under Trump, we will have no more wars, no more disruptions, and we will have prosperity and peace for all. I am the candidate of peace. I am peace. We will turn the page forever. One of those foolish, stupid days of never-ending wars. They never ended.
You insisted no new wars.
So again, we do have Trump on record basically saying that he was going to end the wars and then just not doing it. So again, Channel 12 with the full backstory on site. We kind of covered this before. Trump called Netanyahu twice. The first call came after Iran's initial missile launches. Trump warned against the escalation, said Israel had no U.S. approval for broader action. Netanyahu argued Iran violated Israeli sovereignty and struck anyways. After Iran's final barrage, Tehran contacted Washington directly and signaled readiness for a ceasefire. Israel began preparing a third, larger strike. Trump called Netanyahu again. You did what you did. Now hold your fire. We are heading towards an agreement. Netanyahu returned to the command bunker and canceled all the planned attack with aircraft already prepared to launch. 5 regional governments apparently also called Trump asking him to restrain Israel. The pattern is now established. Each cycle ends with Washington holding the line. But each cycle also starts with Israel deciding it doesn't need permission to end that. So at the end of the day, Israel is taking it into their matters into their own hands. They're saying we don't need the United States permission to do anything. They're going against all instructive will of the United States. Again, this comes from the Prime Minister of Israel himself and this account on X. Statement by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this evening. A year ago, we launched a historic preemptive strike against Iran's intention to destroy us with atomic bombs. We thwarted this immediate threat, and we also eliminated the tyrant Khamenei. If we had not acted in the time and with overwhelming force, we would not be here today. And I pledge again, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. So what does that tell you? Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. Same kind of script. This war is not ending anytime soon. You better buckle up and invest in oil. With that same determination, we acted against Hezbollah as well. Hezbollah planned to invade the Galilee with thousands of terrorists, and at the same time, it planned to devastate Israel's cities with 150,000 missiles and rockets. We thwarted this threat as well, and we eliminated Nasrallah. And I would like to tell you, our heroic fighters are tearing Hezbollah to pieces. We continue to destroy all of their terror infrastructure in the security zone, including massive underground facilities in the Bayfrou, the Beaufort Ridge. So massive that they will unlike anything I have ever seen. Iran and Hezbollah are weaker than ever, and we are stronger than ever, but our battle against them is not finished. In the last 24 hours, Iran and Hezbollah tried to impose a new equation upon us, and it is an equation I find intolerable and unacceptable. They thought that they would fire at Israel from Lebanese territory and from Iran, and we would not act. This did not happen, and it will not happen. Not by my watch. Just as I have done for decades, I stood firmly on the right to act against our enemies. This is how we acted now as well. After Hezbollah fired into Israeli territory, I ordered the IDF to attack terror targets in Beirut and to eliminate Hezbollah operatives there. We did that. After Iran attacked Israel, I instructed the IDF to attack military and economic targets throughout Iran. We did that too. At the moment, we are holding our fire because after we struck the terror regime in Tehran, it ceased attacking us. In the event that the terror regime in Iran makes the mistake of resuming attacks on us, we will respond with overwhelming force. Israel has a full right to defend itself, and we are exercising it to an extent necessary. I say this to you just as I say this with appreciation and respect in my good conversations with my friend President Trump. With unity, determination, and wisdom, we will protect the state of Israel. Together, with God's help, we will restore security to the north. So again, this is really that statement where he was saying that. But ultimately, this is why I keep saying this war is not going to end. Israel is not willing to back down just because Trump and the United States is trying to restrain them. They want to have the Greater Israel Project. That is the main objective and the goal. On top of the Abraham Accords, all of these real estate transactions, and they're going to get what they need to get done, and especially as long as Congress is going to continue giving them the money they need and want, and they ask for. Hundreds of billions of dollars or billions of dollars every single year, and we've given them since 1946 basically $318 billion, actually more now probably. So somewhere maybe even $320 billion or more. So the Israelis are getting nothing but money from the U.S. Congress, and now we have H.R. 8800, the National Defense Authorization Act. Again, this is Section 224 of that bill that allows the entire Israeli military to fuse with the Israeli military. And again, that would basically allow the Israelis to have all access to our technology, our intelligence, our information, our classified documents, future goals with different countries, foreign nations, foreign diplomacy. All of it will be under the knowledge and the scope of Israel. So this is a problem. And this is why the Pentagon recently made the statement that Israel is the greatest national security threat at this current time, of the highest level. Literally, the Pentagon just put out this statement. So this is pretty huge. We watched that video at the beginning of this episode. On top of that, we also had Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel was forced to bomb Iran in order to prevent a nuclear attack on Israel. Again, all lies.
Israel carried out historic first blow to prevent a nuclear attack on Israel. I reiterate my commitment. Iran will not have nuclear weapon. The same determination we acted also against Hezbollah. Hezbollah planned to storm into the Galilee and destroy Israeli towns with 150,000 rockets. We also removed that threat and we eliminated Nasrallah. And I want to tell you, our brave fighters are destroying Hezbollah. Overnight, Israel carried out...
So at the end of the day, Israel's not slowing down. And that's really the summary that we need to come to the conclusion with. So again, if Iran makes a mistake and resumes its attacks against us, we will respond forcefully because Israel has the right to defend itself, and we will uphold that right. So again, that is what Netanyahu had to say. So this was also leaked by, this is the, again, RT account on X. U.S. quietly deployed 82nd Airborne paratroopers to Israel amid Trump's commando raid threats. Ken Klippenstein. Deployment reportedly tied to latest U.S. Israeli plans to seize Iran's Karg Island. So again, we've been watching Karg Island with maritime traffic and everything that's going on. And so we're going to look at that right now. So what is going on in the Strait of Hormuz when we look at the maps? What is happening with this entire pattern? What are the patterns we've noticed in the past few weeks? We've noticed that the Strait of Hormuz has remained closed. This blockade has continued. We've noticed a continued congestion of crude oil tankers, these little red dots, these little red triangles you see in this area. This is the entire, essentially, the United States blockade and proxy vessels that we're using to accomplish that near Fujairah, typically. Insurers are not feeling very good about where this war is going. We have restricted airspace in essentially Kasab Island. And again, the Strait of Hormuz has limited flow through traffic. Again, Iran has their own blockade in Hormuz. Qasem Island was also attacked this past weekend, pretty much right here. And a lot of these different refineries and these areas of strategic focus. Now, we have Trump saying that he wants to take Karg Island and the 82nd Airborne being sent to Karg Island. So what we've noticed, this could possibly be true because we are seeing a little bit more traffic from these Iranian fishing vessels in the area, okay? And also we have Iranian crude oil tankers and chemical tankers and LNG and LPG tankers all in this area. Okay, so the United States Air Force is trying to secure Karg Island because Karg Island is a big energy hub and for imports and exports of the Iranian government. As you can see, we have a lot of energy facilities here as we look at the map and everything around it. We have ports, docks, and essentially this is a big central focus. If we control this area, essentially we would control a good section of the Persian Gulf and a lot of any kind of imports or exports coming in. This is what Trump is talking about. This is everything that he's really looking for. So they want to control this area, and what we've seen differently in the past couple weeks, there is an increased amount of traffic around Karg Island here and more vessels, which means maybe there are fights happening right there as we speak. Okay, we have anchored crude oil tankers still in the same place that we've seen since last week. A lot of the same kind of thing. Again, anchored down right near this city. We have Kuwait City, which was also attacked over the past couple weeks. And all of these areas around the Persian Gulf, the northern Persian Gulf, the eastern Persian Gulf are being targeted. So what happened next? Again, we had Qatar, essentially, who have been getting attacked. We had Bahrain getting attacked right next to it. And so, in consequence, we have the UAE, who's basically going to now side with Iran, and they're going to end up closing this entire Bab el-Mandeb Strait here, which is, again, where a lot of crude oil and traffic is flowing through. Okay, and you have to understand, why is this important? Well, this is a big place that the United States gets a lot of our oil and our exports and imports. So now, instead of going through the Red Sea and through the Suez Canal, which, again, is highly congested right now as we zoom into the Suez Canal, as you can see, we have more anchored down crude oil tankers here, limited flow through traffic, a little bit of scattered positioning, telling us that there's still trade happening, but it's just highly limited. And then we also have Port Said, where, again, we still have the same amount of vessels that are pretty much anchored down. As you can see, these little red dots symbolize a anchored down crude oil tanker or chemical tanker or oil products tanker. So typically you'll see that often in this area. And then when we look near Gaza, what do we see? We see almost no trade. So it confirms the fact that there is no trade, no marine traffic. There's no vessels sending any kind of aid to Gaza right now. And Gaza is still being attacked. Again, northern Gaza was just attacked by the Israelis just yesterday and today. Now, and again, the Israelis have said that there will be no more aid that is allowed to go to Gaza. Pretty crazy. Tel Aviv was just struck this past weekend, again, by the Iranians. This is where a lot of the war is happening in northern Israel, and this is where we're seeing a lot of the strikes happen. So when we look at all of this, you have to understand that this is where a lot of the war is being fought, at least when it comes to the Iranians and where they're positioning their attacks and their strikes. Again, they're also launching these from Hezbollah, they're launching these from southern Lebanon. And so as we move upward to Lebanon here, we can see where these attacks are really beginning to happen. Okay, so again, this is where the Israelis have been attacking Tyre. This is in western Lebanon. And again, this is known to be one of the oldest civilizations, oldest towns in history. And the Israelis are occupying this right now. A big UNESCO state right here, UNESCO-controlled area. Again, the entire war that's been happening on the southern border of Israel has been happening for about, a couple decades now, really. We're just hearing about a lot of this now. So when you look at some of these UN centers that are built here, we got one strategically placed just northward up here in southern Lebanon. This is a UNIFIL HQ Nakora headquarters, and you always see war zones just near these areas, right? So as we look, you'll see these villages that are pretty much bombed, and they've been taken down by the Israelis. You can see the pillaging of these areas. We cover a lot of these areas a lot on this show, but it's important to cover them because we have to understand where this war is actually being fought. And again, it's being fought on the southern border of Lebanon, all the way from Tyre, western Lebanon, all the way to Odessa, which is eastern Lebanon, or southeastern Lebanon. So really, when we look at this, a lot of big events happening. So we have to pay attention to all of the different combat zones and different areas that are being completely pillaged, wiped out, villages being completely brought to the floor, buildings being completely brought to the floor, where you can literally see smoke coming from these war zones, these battle zones, battlefields. You can see where the moment that these areas have been bombed. So pretty crazy. So this entire area where the cursor is that you can see, southern Lebanon, this is where the Israelis are trying to take, all the way up to Nabatea right here. So this is where they're going, and I think that ultimately they really have control all the way up northward to Beirut. And they want to take all of Lebanon because really they want to go up this entire strip, and they want to control Ukraine up there. They want to get Turkey next, and once they control Turkey, interestingly enough, what do they got? Then they control this entire area, this entire region. So then they start focusing on Ukraine, which is right here. So again, right here. So if they control Turkey, think about this for a minute. If they can go all the way upwards from Lebanon to Syria, and then all the way to northern Turkey, well, then they just have to basically get across these different areas here, and they control Ukraine. They can really control this just by controlling the entire Black Sea. So if they control the Black Sea via northern Turkey, what do they control? They're already into Ukraine. So you're seeing a lot of these fights being fought in Ukraine because the United States is using Ukraine as a proxy to control the state of Ukraine for rare earth elements, rare earth enrichments. This is why the Russians and this entire border, where you're seeing my cursor right now, the Russian border, the Russian-Ukrainian border, this has been being fought for a long time. The Ukrainians have had tanks on this border for quite a long time pointed right at Moscow. So think about that. Look at the geography of Moscow, how close it is to this border, and imagine that if Canada, imagine if this was, I don't know, let's just make an example. Let's just say New York City. kind of right near the border, the Canadian border, right? And then, so imagine that this was the U.S.-Canadian border. This is New York City, Moscow, very similar cities. You can compare them. And then imagine if you had the Canadians on their border pointing tanks at us saying that, hey, this is our land. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not your land. And so this is what the war is being fought over. So this Greater Israel Project actually goes all the way up to Ukraine, and a lot of people don't want to talk about that. Because again, what is the Greater Israel Project? The Greater Israel Project is Israel taking over the lands of Syria, Lebanon. Again, they want Egypt. They want Iran. They want Iraq. They want Saudi Arabia. They want Oman, Yemen, and then ultimately Cyprus, then Turkey. And then it goes on and on and on, essentially as much as they can control. And of course also Somalia. We have Somaliland now, which is this southern tip here. And now they basically control that. So what does that mean? Let's take a look at that geography. If the Israelis control the Somaliland, which is this little horn right here, well, what does that mean? Not only do they control the Red Sea, which, again, they basically control this through the United States, as the United States controls Sudan, that border of the Red Sea here. So, again, this is Sudan, and the border of Sudan is right here, right on the Red Sea. This is why we pay $30 million to these villages and these people, so that way we can control this area of the Red Sea for trade routes and trade purposes. And again, if Israel were to control Somaliland, which is what, again, they call it Somaliland now, if they control this area, not only do we control the middle of the Red Sea here, proxy via the United States, and then, of course, the Suez Canal, which we already control via Cyprus, which is right here where my cursor is, just a little bit upwards north of this area of Cairo, the city of Cairo. So when we look at all of this, again, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait will also be controlled if the Israelis control Somalia, which this is being done before your eyes. So why is it that you see all of these blockades happening? That's why. We're looking at trade, and we're looking at potential shipping routes. When you look at the traffic going around the southern tip of Africa and the Cape of Good Hope here, where my cursor is, this is another big point of contention. You're seeing a lot of U.S. vessels having to go all the way around, and this is what's slowing down the entire economics in the United States, the entire global economy, really. Because all these ships, instead of going through the Strait of Hormuz to get all their products, or even through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait into the Suez Canal into Europe, now they have to go all the way around the southern tip of Africa, around Spain, to the Spanish Canal here, and then they have to go through into Europe that way. And then don't forget, we also have Sri Lanka, just south of India, which is a huge, huge location for the United States and our trade. So now we have a ton of congestion here, and a lot of anchored vessels here, because of everything that's going on with this entire trade. Everything's basically on halt, and insurance companies are not willing to insure these vessels because they don't know what's going to happen with this war. So that's really the situation when we look at all of this. So ultimately, we're going to see what happens over the next few days and over the next couple weeks. Again, when we look at Flight Radar Tracker, and when we see all of the newest information on that and what's going on, we're able to see and track some of where this flight activity is going, some of this flight action. We're able to see a little bit of activity, what's going on over the Strait of Hormuz, what is being transported to Europe, and maybe we can see patterns of any kind of flights going into Europe. And when you see flights going northward to Europe in a straight line or in a strategic pattern, typically that means that we have some kind of strike coming that you can expect in the Middle East. Okay, so as we look at this, today, the number one tracked vessel is IAW 8190, the Jeddah flight. And this flight has basically been going from, again, it doesn't say here, to Sharjah, and it's been going into Iran. So again, when we look at this flight started, just lagging a little bit. So when we look at this entire map, they've been coming from the Red Sea here. Again, this is a big port where a lot of trade and exports, imports happen for the United States. Well, we're seeing a lot of things being taken into Iran. So now we know that this appears to be an Iranian plane. So again, we have a lot of movement, or again, Iraq, meant to say. Then we have the Auckland, the ANZ 417. When we track this flight, this is another flight that's been getting tracked all day long. So again, this started in Amman, and it's leaving Erbil. And again, this is also going over the airspace of Iraq. And then where is it coming from? Essentially, it's coming from this little area right here, Syria. So what's happening, what's being transported? And then again, when we look at the regular standard traffic happening over the Strait of Hormuz, it's interesting that there's restricted airspace over here, but we do have airspace from the UAE typically going over this area, over Bahrain, over to Qatar, and then they take these products over into Israel or, again, sometimes Saudi Arabia, and then mostly, a lot of the time, northward, upward into Europe. Sometimes they come from Jordan, and these are big places you'll see these flights actually stop and go. So important to always track the flights and where things are happening. The patterns tell me that this war is only going to continue on. We have all these flights going in and around Israel, and again, we have all these flights basically going around these different areas that suggest that this war is only going to continue. More action continues. So again, when we really zoom into Tel Aviv, looks like we have a series of flights here. Again, a lot of these probably just more passenger flights, but very interesting what we're seeing on the flight tracker. So how has this all been affecting the markets? The oil prices today are at $91.45. Brent crude's at $94.25. Merchant crude's at $91.90. And natural gas is at $3.14. So when we look at this, it tells us that Trump's statements, maybe the leaked videos or the leaked interviews of him and Netanyahu saying that he's trying to restrain Israel, saying that this war is going to end, all of the peace agreements, the ceasefires in place that are still trying to be withheld, and again, the holdback or the pullback a little bit from the United States on this war is maybe keeping these markets at bay for now. But I don't know how much longer that's going to last. We also have crypto, which, again, last week, we've got changes. The crypto market told us that the fear and greed index last week was at like 33, 34. We saw that throughout the week. Now it's at 16. So people are extremely afraid to invest in the emerging crypto market that we are going to see blowing up here, probably maybe July 4th to August, depending on how things go. Doesn't look like a lot of these things could happen. Ultimately, I think it could still. But again, we see Bitcoin at $63,425, Ethereum at $1,705, XRPs all the way down at $1.17. So again, what I see, buy it on sale. You know, you buy low, sell high. You see these assets that are cheap. Again, Solana's at $67.22. Buy these assets ultimately at the end of the day while they're cheap. Okay, don't let it go to waste. And this is really where you're going to win when it comes to crypto. This is where you're going to see big markets make a difference. So again, emerging markets with the Clarity Act and the Ethics Committee in the Senate hearing is going to be taking place on July 4th. Essentially, we already know that the Save America Act has been essentially not passed, which is crazy. But that was pretty much holding up the entire Clarity Act. So maybe we will see some activity on the actual Clarity Act by the Senate Ethics Committee. We know that the Democrats are mostly out of favor of it. We know Elizabeth Warren hates crypto. She's very Gary Gensler, very anti-crypto. But we will see what happens with crypto. Ultimately, I predict and project over time at some point, this market is going to blow up again. It is going to be the future. Everything is going to be digitized and tokenized at a certain point, probably more when this war starts to wrap up. But maybe we'll see. You know, ultimately, there's no way the United States is ever going to be able to pay off its debt without crypto, really, when you think about it. So again, I expect good things to happen for crypto. Meanwhile, we also have the stock market where the S&P 500 is at $7,405.73. We have the Dow Jones at $50,786, so it's still barely hanging over $50,000. And we have the NASDAQ at $25,929. Again, the stock market today, the S&P 500, NASDAQ rise on chip stock rebound. So again, everything's about AI, microprocessors, microchips, semiconductors. That's what the entire war is all about. This is why the United States does want to take Taiwan, because it's a big semiconductor and microprocessor center where all of these things are developed. But now, since we basically are going to be developing a lot of our semiconductors and microprocessors in Israel, now the United States feel that we don't need to really worry about Taiwan. But I think, as an American, I think it's definitely a problem if, you know, I'm using one example here, your iPhone 17e, all of those are going to be developed, again, at least the microprocessors and the semiconductors, those are going to be produced now and developed in Israel. And so what does that mean? Well, we think about the pager event with Hezbollah and how Hamas was taken out simultaneously by these pagers that essentially detonated and killed most of the leadership through shell companies. This entire Hezbollah military, and they bought these phones through these shell companies, and essentially they were exploded and detonated and killed a lot of these Hezbollah leaders. So could they do the same thing to our phones? Probably. And so it's kind of dangerous to think that a lot of our iPhone and future iPhones and Apple iPhones are going to be these microprocessors and semiconductors. All of this is going to be developed in Israel. And so what's happening with gold? Gold markets are at $4,315.99 per ounce, and silver's at $67.86 an ounce. So again, silver's really down. But again, ultimately, you have to bet on the long game. Okay, these are all hedging markets. Meanwhile, with real estate, if you're looking into real estate, again, call me up if you're looking to invest in real estate. I'm a real estate agent in Michigan. The U.S. real estate the U.S. real estate market is currently experiencing a gridlock driven by high affordability constraints. The median home price sits at around $358,660 to $404,000 and $404,200, depending on the reported index, with modest year-over-year price growth. Meanwhile, mortgage rates are over 6%, severely limiting buyer purchasing power. Yeah, big time. Home prices. National home prices appreciation has significantly slowed, averaging between 0 and 2.4% year over year. Interest rates, 30-year fixed rate mortgage rates have remained elevated in the mid to high 6% range. And again, inventory and sales tell us that active for sale listings have modestly increased, hovering near a 4.4-month supply. Despite more options, total home sales volume remains subdued as a large percentage of listings are considered unaffordable for the typical median income earner. I think that's absolutely accurate. That's what you see a lot with the younger generation. They can't afford a home. They can't afford a home that was once worth $70,000 and now it's worth $700,000, and it looks the exact same, and there's like hardly any renovations on it. You know, this is the beauty of real estate and the horrors of real estate. We are, I wouldn't say in a bubble, but we are in gridlock. We are in a position where basically we are stuck, and the market is stuck at the moment. Only the commercial and multifamily investors and people with money and income and high credit score are really going to have the best chances at real estate. Markets across the West Coast and Sun Belt are seeing price declines and stagnation due to a spike in new construction, whereas historically competitive Northeast and Midwest markets remain rigid. So again, commercial real estate, multifamily, and rentals. The national average rent is stabilizing around $1,930 with minor month-over-month increases, but relatively flat year-over-year growth. Investment metrics, while office sectors face ongoing valuation struggles, medical outpatient buildings, MOBs, and net lease industrial properties continue to demonstrate strong performance and stable capitalization rates. What does that mean? AI data centers. So the people in real estate that are really making the money, they're the ones buying up land, building a data center there, and you're getting rich, but the people are going to hate you, and you're selling out your country. So depending on, what do you matter more? What matters to you more? Survival in the current economy, and you're going to just in order to beat them, you join them, you create data centers, you invest in data centers, or, do you struggle, work really hard, and who knows what at the end of the day? Like, at the end of the day, the real estate market's pretty wild, and it's kind of crazy. So again, now I just wanted to look at some bookmarked posts here on X. This is ultimately what's happening here. We covered that. Again, we covered that. Happening now, did you know that the Pentagon has issued emergency warnings concerning Netanyahu's attempted hijacking of not just the Pentagon, but all of our U.S. intelligence? So this is Alex Jones and a clip from him. Take a listen to this video talking more about H.R. 8800 and the National Defense Authorization Act of 2027 fiscal year, which allows the Israelis to essentially integrate their entire military with our military. And essentially, there's already no reciprocation from the Israeli military. And here, now they are going to have access to all of our intelligence. Grok or ChatGPT will say, well, that's not true, and that's not happening, and actually it's just this and it's just that. Congress will say, oh, no, these are all conspiracy theories. That is the response they will have because they're getting paid pretty good money to keep this lie going. The boomers are selling out America, truly.
The real gut punch is what's happening in Congress at the exact same time. On the heels of the revelation of Section 224 slowly advancing, Senator Tom Cotton slipped Section 622 into the FY27 Intelligence Authorization Act. This thing locks America into permanent, unbreakable intelligence entanglement with Israel. It mandates expanded sharing, ties it to Israel's qualitative military edge, restricts the president or future Congress from scaling it back without jumping through huge legal hoops and notifying bought and paid for committees, and even pushes sharing with Abraham Accords countries. There will be no
There we go. So I was just mentioning how important the Abraham Accords are to this entire thing. You all think that maybe Trump is going to end this war. Maybe he's going to really side with America first. Well, that's likely not going to happen. When you hear all of this doublespeak and you hear about ceasefires, just remember that the Abraham Accords are being run by Jared Kushner and, again, Steve Witkoff. So when you look at this entire transaction, this is a real estate transaction that's being done. This is a new city that's being built in Gaza on top of the bulldozed and essentially everything we've seen in Gaza happen now. They're building an entirely new city on it, and it's going to have Trump Tower there. It's going to have all of these. It's going to be American-owned mostly, with a hybrid of Israel, and Israel's going to own our intelligence in return. Basically, they want to merge our countries together into one. And now, essentially, while they say, oh, we'll be partners, that's great, I think they're going to use that against us. Look at what happened with Palestine. The Israelis can't even live with the Palestinians since 1947, right? It was the Israelis and the Jews, really, who were shipped into Palestine in 1947, and they've been living with the Palestinians, and then all of a sudden, they feel the need to take over this entire land, and they have this authority over the land because they bring up the Jacob and Ishmael argument and how they've owned the land for thousands of years since the beginning of time. And so you see all of this happening mainly because of that. So there's this thousands of years of blood guilt, and they believe that they have the right to this land. And so again, with the Abraham Accords on top of that, this war is going to continue.
Finding this.
Every time I start reading the subsections, I want to throw up. I mean, you see what that does? Do you see that?
We're all saying that, Alex Jones, at the end of the day.
The treason contained in the 2027 NDAA, handing over control of the U.S. military and intelligence systems to Israel, is mirrored in the National Intelligence Funding Bill. So that even if we shoot down Section 224 in the NDAA, it will pass in the Senate Intelligence Bill. It just goes on and on.
And Section 222 that was created by Tom Cotton will also already give all of this intelligence to the state of Israel. And who knows what else is in there that hasn't been found yet.
So much of this broadcast is we're just researching live here on air. We've got to go through everything. We've got to check all the defense bills. There's a whole bunch of them, not just the big omnibus bills, the intelligence bill and the defense authorization bill. This is talking about trillions of dollars here. This is insane. And it's all about Israel. Page 2.
Yep.
And it goes
no
into
way
handing
around
over everything. Good gracious. I am just...
We need a revolution.
Absolutely blown away right now.
Immediately.
But of course this is going on. And I would imagine, did Netanyahu write this too? Because
yeah,
Netanyahu
probably
wrote letters to the Republicans on the committee thanking them for passing it out of committee. The first committee, now it passed the final committee. Now it's got to go out for a full vote. Then it goes with the Senate and back and forth. It'll take a month to haggle over the whole bill. And then he changes the House, goes back to the Senate and back and forth.
They think about October, this is really going to be passed for good, for sure.
In conference, but
look, he's at a loss for words completely.
Brags that he wrote the legislation subsection, his plan, quote, thanks for implementing my plan, in his letter. What do you want to bet? Because I'm reading it. It mirrors the defense bill.
And that's everything we're seeing when it comes to that. It's going to be crazy. At the end of the day, we are selling out our country. 250 years America survived until we were conquered by the state of Israel. And that's where we are at in the history books right now, from my analytical, professional perspective. So again, also yesterday, Elon tweeted, the reason ID is banned in California and New York elections is to enable large-scale fraud. When you combine no ID and mail-in voting, fraud is de facto legalized. So look at that. Ultimately, this is totally what's happening. Spencer Pratt is likely going to be overtaken by far-left Nithya Raymond today. The graph shows the count on election day through last night. Nithya did this by suddenly winning first in every new ballot drop. So again, they just dropping all these mail-in ballots, and that's why they're never nervous about these elections. They know that they're just going to cheat, and they're going to win by completely cheating and flooding the mail-in ballot box with fake votes, dead people, people who don't exist, completely fake and completely lies. But this will win, and California will continue to burn because of it, because it is a completely corrupt state, the most corrupt state in the entire country, by far, and nothing is being done about it. And then, again, meanwhile, Trump says this on social media. So we all think that Trump's fighting for America first, and as much as I wish he was, you look at these statements. He literally endorsed Lindsey Graham, who is a totally anti-Trumper. Lindsey Graham hates Trump. Understand that. Before Trump was ever running, Lindsey Graham hated Trump. He never liked Donald Trump. He never supported Trump. There are video compilations of him saying this. And so this, but anyways, again, look at what happens. Lindsey Graham is supporting the Ukraine war. Again, a complete war hawk. He is supporting the entire Israel-Iran war, wants to destroy Iran, again, wants to destroy civilization, essentially, and all these other things. And then what does Trump say? Senator Lindsey Graham is working incredibly hard for the great people of South Carolina, a state I loved and won big in 2026, 2020, and 2024. Lindsey has been a wonderful friend and has always been there when I needed him. That's so not true. As the chair of the Senate Budget Committee, Lindsey is fighting tirelessly to grow the economy, lower taxes, cut regulations, and eliminate government waste. Yeah, cut taxes for the rich, not you. Not you watching. Lindsey is also relentlessly focused on keeping us and our border secure. Not true. Stop migrant crime, strongly support for our military/veterans. Not true. He wants military and veterans to die in Iran. That's what's happening right now. He wants to send your kids to die in Iran. This is what Lindsey Graham wants. So he doesn't care about your military veterans. He wants to rule over them and send them over to the desert to essentially fight a Vietnam 2.0, an Afghanistan war 2.0, an Iraq 2.0. George W. Bush getting us into war for America and then destroying America in the process. Unleash American energy dominance. Promote made in the USA. Yeah, right. Made in the USA. He wants Ukraine. What are you talking about, Trump? Safeguard our elections. Defend our always under siege Second Amendment and ensure peace through strength. Lindsey Graham is the same guy who said that Trump should never be president and that he will never be president. He said this in 2016. What are we talking about here? Crazy. Lindsey Graham has my complete and total endorsement for re-election. Election day is Tuesday, June 9th. Get out and vote for Lindsey. He will never let you down. Yes, he will. Yes, he will. And the crazy part is the MAGA base will say, yes, we want that because Trump told us to. Not suggesting the idea that he could be completely owned by the same people. Meanwhile, an Obama leftist judge has struck down President Trump's landmark 100,000 H-1 visa fee. WTF. Judge Leo Sorokin just declared himself president and said Trump isn't allowed to do this, impeach the judge, and overturn. The judge is a foreigner first and needs to be slapped down ASAP. So again, even though I'm not a big fan of Howard Lutnick, I agree with this clip here. We do need to get rid of the H-1B visa system completely, and there needs to be a high fine if you're going to try to be some kind of immigrant in the country working here on an H-1B. You should be forced to pay a lot of money in order to get in here.
No more will these big tech companies or other big companies train foreign workers. They have to pay the government $100,000, then they have to pay the employee. So it's just not economic. If you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land. Train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs. That's the policy here. $100,000 a year for H-1B visas, and all of the big companies are on board. We've spoken to them about the gold card.
They love it. They love it. They really love it. They need it. Go ahead, Chuck.
Mr. President, it seems like there's two categories.
No more. Will
kind of interesting. I don't know. I don't think H-1B visas should be paid anything. There should be no H-1B visas, in my opinion. They do not offer anything to the country except, again, taking our jobs. And, again, they are completely outnumbering the entire population. They're changing the entire country itself and what it should look like, which is a white European country. Ultimately, that is historically what America is. It's what our founding fathers were. And even our founding fathers did once say that America is a country of white men of good stock, end quote. So you have to look at that and understand that H-1B visas is just a way for cheap labor to come into your country, and so they can steal your jobs. They can make $100,000 a year while you get stuck complaining on the internet. and you have to watch it all happen, and you lose your country. And then they get to drive you in your Uber and tell you how you're losing your country and that how this is their country. Unbelievable. I think this is the war of the future. Israel is doing it again. Israel is demanding the purchase of 40 Greek islands to serve as a private safe haven for Israelis. They are literally blueprinting total erasure of Greek borders, planning to usurp full sovereignty and install an Israeli ethno-state in Europe. So they're conquering the world right now. But are they really? Who knows? Depends on what happens with this war ultimately and what happens with Netanyahu. Netanyahu has committed war crimes, and he's even being convicted of these war crimes in his own country. So we will see what happens. Meanwhile, the Albanian citizens in Albania's Voze Narte Delta Bay successfully repelled Israel first back to security forces attempting to shield construction in the protected wetlands where endangered flamingos nest along with the last 300 endangered Mediterranean monk seals, coral reefs, and turtles. Yeah, well, did you know that this island has tunnels in it? It's basically has nuclear bunkers in it. This is the real reason the Trumps and the Kushner essentially are acquiring this land. And again, only billionaires. It's the new Epstein Island, essentially. This is why the Albanians have been fighting against this. So people are saying no. The people of Albania don't want their land to be stolen where it is literally supposed to be for endangered species. And now all of that's going to be bulldozed over for new construction to be built so Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner can build the next Epstein Island. According to what we've read about the statistics on what this island actually is, it has a nuclear bunker underneath it, miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of tunnels, and ultimately, only the billionaires are going to be allowed. Interesting stuff. And that's in the words of Jared Kushner. So again, that's happening while we're talking about all of these different wars happening at the same time. Again, we covered that. This is Thomas Massie covering the USS Liberty. I wanted to cover this a little bit.
The American flag was flying proudly. On the next day, on June 8th, they started the day. The visibility was unlimited. The American flag was flying proudly on the USS Liberty. More planes came from Israel to surveil the boat, the ship. And they thought they were in good shape, but what happened next surprised them all. French Mirage jets showed up, and for 25 minutes, strafed and attacked the USS Liberty. They shot rockets. They shot 30-millimeter cannons into the hull.
And just saying, Thomas Massie is doing the Lord's work talking about this issue. It's rather important. And again, we are on that anniversary right now at the time of this same recording. And again, 294 U.S. personnel aboard, 34 killed, 31 sailors, 2 of which were Marines, 171 wounded, and 800 different holes were left from the gunfire. Never forget that.
To the ship. They even dropped napalm on the bridge of the ship. This was an effort to kill everybody on board. There was no intention of taking prisoners. After the 25 grueling minutes of attack on this virtually unarmed ship, and they thought things were over and they could recover, the torpedo boats showed up, 3 torpedo boats. They launched 4 torpedoes. One of them hit the hull of the USS Liberty and killed 25 people instantly. It blew a 40-foot by 40-foot hole in the side of this ship. They were intent on sinking it. But they were also intent on not having a single survivor. According to eyewitness accounts, the Israelis machine-gunned the lifeboats that they put down. They machine-gunned the firefighters who were on the deck. They were bringing the wounded and the dead to the mess hall.
Greatest
to triage
allies.
them. They had one doctor who was trying to help them all, put a few stitches in. It was harrowing, and it's amazing. If not for that crew, that boat would have sunk that day. But it still wasn't over. Helicopters showed up, combat helicopters. And the USS Liberty, even though their signals were being jammed by the Israelis, got a signal out. And there were ships that tried to respond. The USS Saratoga, the USS America sent planes. Both of them sent planes to help the USS Liberty. And something happened that's never happened before. A ship under attack, the planes were recalled. This has never happened before. And they sat there for 17 hours 34 dead, 174 wounded, out of 294 crew members. That's over 70% casualty rate, unheard of. The Israelis were intent on leaving no survivor. And what about our own military? Why did they not send anybody for 17 hours to help these men? So what really happened? You know, the official reports say that it was a case of mistaken identity. But if you listen to Dean Rusk, former Secretary of State, Richard Helms, CIA Director, Bobby Ray Inman, head of the NSA, Captain Ward Boston, who was the chief counsel of the Court of Inquiry. If you listen to Admiral Moore, who served in Pearl Harbor, Midway, commanded both the Atlantic and Pacific Fleet, and was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, none of these distinguished men think this was an accident. They think it was intentional murder by the country of Israel.
So do
Either
I.
as a false flag operation, or because they simply didn't want anybody observing what they were doing that day.
Yep.
Well, I've got a call to action for everybody here. Honor these individuals. Quit ignoring that they exist. Go to their website, ussliberty.org. Support them. And while they're still alive, they need closure. Let's give them closure. Let's have an investigation. Let's pass a resolution honoring them. It's long overdue. And then they can have their justice. With that, I yield back. And I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the declaration of Ward Boston declaring that the only official court of inquiry was invalid.
Yep. And so that's Thomas Massie summarizing what happened on the USS Liberty that day and how our greatest allies really, perhaps, were working against the interest of the United States in a very dark way. According to Polymarket, Meta announces it will seek legal action against Israeli spyware firm NSO over new WhatsApp phishing attempts. Isn't that interesting? You should stay off of WhatsApp. Everybody knows that. Don't go on WhatsApp, especially if your employers tell you to. Don't do it. U.S. Central Command. U.S. forces disable non-compliant oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman. U.S. forces disabled an unladen oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman on June 8th after the vessel violated an ongoing blockade against Iran by attempting to sail to an Iranian port. So again, when we look at all of this, pretty crazy, pretty interesting. And ultimately, this is really what's going on. So we're going to end it after this little... we'll just end it now. We're going to end the stream right now, but ultimately, this is where we're at. What do you think is coming for the United States of America? Do you think we will end this war, or do you think we will continue the war? Do you think that this is really going to end? Even Trump said, both sides, Israel and Iran, are looking to an immediate ceasefire. Final negotiations or peace are proceeding, subject to ignorance or stupidity getting in its way. The blockade will remain in place in its full force and effect until a final deal is reached. Things should move quickly. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So again, what do you think is going to happen? So again, if you think that you want to escape the matrix, you want to make more money, and you want to get out of the entire rat race, then work with Gold Shark Media AI, goldsharkmedia.com. This is the software I developed for entrepreneurs and service businesses. It is completely vetted. We have lots of clients that are happy, 5 stars, and ultimately it allows you to follow up with your clients or any potential prospects easily. Okay, you can either sign up for the monthly subscription from $79 a month to $497 a month, or you could just pay the one-time fee of $800 a year to $5,000 a year. And this will allow you to essentially have everything you possibly need, and you'll be able to run ads and do some pretty interesting things on it. Pretty much an all-in-one business online, and a software you can take with you in your pocket, in your entire business in your pocket. So it makes life easy for any kind of entrepreneur or business owner. At the same time, if you're investing in Michigan real estate, be sure to contact me, Brendan Ecker, and you can click the link in the description below. Go to BrendanEckerRealty.com, sign up for a consultation with me, or you sign up, just, again, fill out one of the contact forms, and we'll get you some Michigan real estate. We'll help you acquire the real estate property you need. And lastly, if you're an entrepreneur like myself and you like to make money, how about become a real estate agent, and I'll help you do it. Get PassRE USA, visit that website, PassREUSA.com, and you'll get 1,300 practice questions for real estate, for the state exam specifically. This is what it is for. It's relevant for all 50 states. Ebooks, lesson chapters, interactive videos, and PDFs for maximum learning. $99, it's a one-time purchase, and you have it for life. But everybody who's used it has loved it, and it's helped them pass their real estate state licensing exam. So that way you have a license, and you can make money by just selling real estate or helping people buy real estate. It's a good way to make money, ladies and gentlemen. You need more money when you're living in an economy like ours, right? So ultimately, that's all I have at the end of the day. What do you think about this episode? Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. And at the end of the day, again, support the show. Follow me on Substack. And again, go to our YouTube shorts. Follow all of the updates on the war that's happening. We try to stay updated on it. And we'll be here back tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And ultimately, I have nothing else. Be sure to stay prudent, stay powerful, and stay well.